according to your website, in 2010, the results of the $25 million Interphone study, the most far-reaching study of its kind, run across 13 countries, found regular use of a cell phone by adults can significantly increase the risk of gliomas by 40% with 1,640 hours or more of use. This is about 1/2 hour per day over 10 years. In 2011, the World Health Organization's International Agency for Research on Cancer, IARC, concluded that cell phone radiation and Wi-Fi and other RF frequencies in the band 30 kilohertz to 300 gigahertz are possibly carcinogenic to humans, group 2B. The Bioinitiative Report 2012 references over 1,800 studies showing adverse biological effects from low-level EMF exposures. Subsequent updates referenced thousands more studies showing evidence of adverse biological effects. And in 2016, the U.S. National Toxicology Program, NTP, $30 million study found incidences of malignant gliomas, brain cancer, and schwannomas, also known as neuromas, in the heart of rats exposed to cell phone radiation and DNA damage. Can you comment on these studies?
So that's a lot of science you've shared there. But just to clarify, firstly, on the Interphone, that was a big study, $25 million study, as you said. All those are big studies. The Interphone, the NTP is so far the biggest, the National Toxicology Program. That was a $30 million study, which is a very recent study, which came out 2016, 2018. So just to talk firstly about the Interphone study, just to clarify what you said there, because actually the conclusion of the Interphone was, if you go, if you do a search online, and then you get like, a one-sentence conclusion. And that one-sentence conclusion is that there is no risk of glioma and meningioma. Okay, so you think, oh, we're all good. Well, not quite, because if you go and look in the small print, then you can see what you just cited. And what you just cited was the 1,064 hours of use, etc. But what that actually, and that doesn't really mean a lot to anybody, but if you say using your cell phone for 30 minutes a day can increase your risk of a brain tumor by 40%, then I might have your attention, Ben, yeah? And so this is what the Interphone study actually said, what they actually found, but they didn't really want to say, which is, well, and I think we're going to get into this later on about this, maybe how the science has not always been reported as it should be. That's to say, with honesty and integrity. So the study, this was in the study's findings, and yet it was not in the conclusion, and it was kind of lost, in the midst of time after that. So that is incredibly misleading, and they put it down to errors and biases, that, the 40% increase. So this is 2010. You just think about the world in 2010 and the kind of cell phones we had, and the, Bluetooth was, most people didn't even know what that was. Not everybody had Wi-Fi. We certainly, smart really wasn't a term that really wasn't common. So we weren't in this incredible wireless world which we are today. So that's the first point with regard to the Interphone. With regard to the World Health Organization classification, so it's classified, this thing called cell phone radiation is classified as a 2B possible carcinogen. That was 2011. The World Health Organization, now, how can I put this? They are incredibly conservative. They come under tremendous pressure from lobbies because everybody's listening to the World Health Organization, just like they are now with, what's going on with the pandemic, for guidance as to, what's right and what's wrong. Should we wear masks and all this? Should we be taking vaccines and so on and so forth? So it's incredibly important what they say. And what is very clear is that this conclusion of 2B possible carcinogen, which they attributed to cell phone radiation, was way too conservative. And in the light of subsequent studies, I mean, even at the time, it was perhaps, in my view anyway, it was the wrong opinion to give. It was the wrong advice to give. But in the light of the information we have since, as to say the CERNAT study, which is a big French study, as to say that the NTP study, again, what you mentioned previously, this big $30 million federal US study, which found clear evidence of cancer with regard to heart schwannomas, and some evidence with regard to gliomas. And with regard to notably the work of Swedish researchers Hardell and Karlberg, who've been doing some of the best research on the brain with regard to the brain and cell phone radiation. So it's really very clear now, and it's not particularly me who's saying it, it's the people that actually were on the committee with the World Health Organization at the time, which voted on the 2B, or were swayed into just giving it 2B, that it should actually be a class 1 known carcinogen. That's where we are. And that is, let's call a spade kind of thing. And it's and the research is there, as I say, all these studies now, because 10 years, this is 10 years now, 10 years in terms of what's going on, and the pace of technology is a lifetime. And so, yeah, this clearly these recommendations, these announcements from these different bodies like the World Health Organization are completely out of date and not doing their job in terms of protecting people, which they should be.
Please discuss the cell phone industry study headed by Dr. George Carlo. What did it try to prove, and what did it end up proving?
Yeah, so Dr. George Carlo. So what happened was a lady called Susan Reynard got a brain tumor, and this was back in the 1990s. And she was convinced that this brain tumor was caused by her cell phone. And so she sued the cell phone manufacturer, the retail company store where she bought the cell phone from, and the telecom company who she was got a contract with. And sadly, Susan died, and David Reynard, her husband, went on. She died through her brain tumor, and her husband went on the Larry King Live show and told the story. And this rocked the boat of the cell phone industry. And they laid out $28 million on this WTR wireless technology research program to prove once and for all that cell phones were safe. And this was a 7-year study headed by Dr. George Carlo. And the results of this 7-year study were unfortunately just the opposite of what the cell phone industry wanted. And he concluded that, in fact, cell phone radiation could cause cancer, and that cell phone radiation could cause heart problems. And as I say, that was the 1990s. And, the studies which have come since then, and for people that are paying attention, I talked about the NTP before. What did they say? It was almost exactly the same thing. And by the way, the NTP, so the National Toxicology Program study, this big American $30 million study, that study was replicated by the Ramazzini Institute in Italy, and they came to exactly the same conclusions. So this study was not a fluke, and these risks of cancer are real.